Good evening, and my name is Nidhi, Yasha. I've been very kindly introduced by the very fine gentleman here. And I'm really grateful to be here this evening. And like he said, I own a fashion label by the name Nidhi Yasha, and I also own a fashion costume design company. One of its kind. It's called, it started as the NY Studio, and now we are called TNY's Global. And quite the opposite to the story that we heard right before this. Mine is a slightly different kind of story, which we'll get down to now. I was nearly 10 when I realized that I didn't really fit in. I was the backbencher, the daydreamer, the one with the loitering mind and the wandering imagination, and very, very brutally bullied for these traits that you usually see in a junior schooler. And because my image did not really meet that of a sincere student by any standards, so to speak. And because when children actually were taking down notes, I was scribbling at the back of my notebooks. I was probably making some drawings. And I was brutally punished also. As you know, we were in the early 90s. It wasn't such a politically correct time. There were punishments. There were a lot of different kinds of punishments. There was some caning also sometimes, and there was some standing in the corner, and nobody really cared about being politically correct. So a lot of times I would actually find myself, shaving crayons on the back bench, blending them to see, what new colors are being formed, and being called out for it. While there's a lecture going on, I wouldn't really be listening to the lectures. I don't think I've ever really been able to hear a whole lecture, and I didn't at that point of time know why I wasn't able to concentrate. My mind would skip, from the blackboard to the hummingbird on the windowsill, to the clouds in the sky, to whatever else that I saw outside the window. I was just not able to concentrate. And we didn't have the sort of understanding to nail or know what was really happening with an 8-year-old mind. Many years later, I was diagnosed with ADHD and OCD, and we'll come back to that later on. But right in the beginning of my childhood, there was every reason for me to believe that I will indeed do nothing when I grow up. And children can be cruel. Because if they're not taught otherwise, they don't know better. They're children. And if you have to tread cautiously with them, you have to tell them how to treat fellow students. Most of the times, at least back in the 90s, people weren't really worried. And cruel they were, because they would make it a point to spell it out to my face and say, or just sort of mock me a lot of times during recess and ask me, what do you want to be? And I really would not be able to answer because I didn't know what I wanted to be. Sometimes you have the problem of plenty, and sometimes you just don't know because you're vague. So the same reasons, like my dear friend just mentioned, wherein you do know that you have the capability of being many things, but you're not able to pinpoint on one because you don't know if at all you're excelling even at one, or you're just a jack of all trades. So so many summers I ate my lunches alone. And I really wished to sort of belong, and I wished that people would come talk to me, that I had a gang, I had friends who I would be able to open my heart to, and it didn't happen, not until, say, the 6th grade or something. And this was around early teenage that I started to take refuge in music, in poetry. I used to like to read, and mostly read like stories in my Hindi and English book, and some novels that I had access to, because I came from a family where there was a lot of literature, lying around. So that kind of helped. And all through these things, I continued to be the classic misfit, because all of these things I would do in my own space, but when I would be in a public situation, I would not be able to utter a word. There's one little story. When I was in the 2nd grade, we used to have an uncle who used to visit us very often, and he used to be a chain smoker. Now, and at one of these days in class, we were told to draw something out of imagination or memory, and I drew this uncle. I drew a man smoking, because that's what I'm seeing, It's not like now when people would step out of the room and light a fag, because again, times are different. And I thought it's a cool thing to draw, and I drew it. And it was probably inappropriate for classwork. I didn't know it, but my teacher definitely thought so. And I was publicly humiliated and shamed and made to stand in a corner for propagating bad habits. Now, I don't think my teacher knew that art is not to please, but to provoke, right? And I didn't know it then either. And I wished I did know to be able to sort of argue it out, but I couldn't. Similar incidents, one after the other, sort of embedded in my mind that I was, in fact, not going to do anything in life. Until in 4th grade, when I was, busy drawing at the back page, the last page in my notebook, one of my more exposed friends happened to see it, and she had casually passed remarks saying, "Ma, you could be a dress designer one day." And I said, "Oh, really? Is that a career? Can I really make a career out of this? Can I do something in life with whatever skills I had?" And I didn't know how good I was at drawing, actually, because nobody had really appreciated it up until then. So it sort of stayed with me, and by the time I was in my 6th grade, I found myself a goal. And why it becomes so much more important for me to say the story today is also because I have a 9-year-old daughter sitting in the audience, and it's very important for me to let her know that, and she's, of course, a whole lot like me, maybe not not surrounded by the bullies that I was, maybe living a slightly more confident life, but when you are sensitive and emotional and artistic, you run the risk of being branded a loser. And even though you in your own mind know how much you're capable of or why you're not able to, sort of excel or achieve to your truest potential, you're not able to really go out there and claim it. And it's important to know that no matter how much the world brands you, it is always possible to find your route. Now, what we are discussing today are more people like me, more Mavericks, more why, I eventually would now call myself from a misfit to a Maverick, because how this journey sort of transitions is what I want to tell you guys and want to take you through. This is the girl that you have heard about. This is a scared teenager, not knowing what she's going to do in life. Cut to, in the year 2008, when I was 26 years old, I started with my company called the NY Studio. And these were absolutely different people. How did this happen? There's a girl who doesn't know what she wants to do, what she wants to be, how she's going to achieve whatever her goals are. And suddenly there's a girl who puts in her life's savings into a company which she has no clue how she's going to take forward. And it really wasn't easy. It wasn't easy because all along the way there were a million hindrances that came by. When I had to go for higher studies, I was told that there was only one city that I could go to because we were middle-class people. And I had extended family in Delhi, so I was told that I could only go to Delhi. And the only fashion college that I could go to in Delhi was, it would only take the top 30 out of the 4 lakh people that were appearing. Now, I'm a girl who hasn't even topped in a class of 50. Who the hell did I think I was? I could totally, I was told by all and sundry that this is a ridiculous goal to have. You're not going to make it, You're just going to burn your parents' money. Now, I come from a family of bureaucrats and doctors and lawyers and service class people mostly, engineers. And the only 2 career choices usually are medicine or engineering, or you can be a lawyer or a professor or a teacher or something more serious and sustainable and nothing as frivolous as fashion, which they didn't really understand. So, of course, there was a lot of pushback from the family because they didn't understand the career. They didn't know what you could really achieve studying something which was just about clothes, where there are people who are studying about making bridges and buildings and the human anatomy. It seemed really frivolous to them. But I did make it. I did get myself that education. And I did find myself in a situation in the middle of the 2008 recession, which was really crippling. I found myself a series of solutions to what was a big problem at hand, which was that our costuming industry was extremely disorganized. There was no company catering organized solutions in that area. It still remains disorganized, by the way. But even as I speak, 10, 12 years later, we still do not have any other company doing what we did in terms of providing organized solution to the costume of the media industry, so to speak. And we not only did we, go on to manufacture costumes for productions in India, but we also exported to China, to Malaysia, to the US, to the UK. And at this point, if you have an opera happening in America, they'd call us and ask if we're going to do their costumes or not. If there's a historical happening in China or in Vietnam, they would call us and ask if we're going to do their costumes or not. As well as we're doing a lot of mainstream media, films as well. So that's how that business began. How did this happen? This happened because at some point, I started taking pride in what made me a misfit. I took pride in my daydreaming, my loitering mind, and my wandering imagination. And I made the most of it. I made a living out of it. It is about learning to celebrate who we are. And there are a few pointers that I want to go over with you guys, just to sort of take you through why being a misfit is indeed a fantastic thing. So, you don't adhere, really. You're never trying to fit in. Like Mr. Bachchan said, हम जहाँ खड़े होते हैं, line वहीं से शुरू होती है. So you figure out what you want to do. You never really fit in. You don't say that, okay, these are the only 4 things that I have in front of me, so I will only go and do these 4 things because none of my, forefathers have done something beyond this. You don't think like that. Nothing really limits you. And you somehow or the other, because of the hustle that you go through, you realize that you're better prepared for most of the challenges that life throws at you. So you become that much more suitable for careers that require you to set trends and not follow like fashion design, like filmmaking, like ad films, like automobile design, or anything which actually needs you to think out of the box. Creators are mavericks. You got to be a maverick. You got to think differently. There would have been no aeroplane if Wright brothers didn't think about flying, right? Or for that matter, I always keep thinking about, there's this film called 2001 Space Odyssey. It was made in the 1960s. Stanley Kubrick sure imagined a world way ahead of his time, 50, 60 years ahead of his time. If you actually see the film, you do see 2001. Maybe not in a Space Odyssey kind of way, but if you see the art and the architecture and the visuals and the entire imagination is such because there is a vision which doesn't conform to any rules that have been given. Then, you're a born rebel. You're a believer of your own ideas, and you're a change maker. Now, rebellion is an extremely important trait in moderation. And if you're a rebel with a cause. Rebellion without a cause, probably not. But if you're a rebel with a cause, you can do so much, you can bring about so much change where it matters. You, again, like I said, you will not conform. You will not ever bow down and say, all right, this is what you want me to do, I'm going to do that. No, if you think otherwise, you'll go fight your battle out. You're authentic. You're true. You don't have to mince your words when you're communicating because you've gone through the worst mostly. You've been sidelined, you've been outcast, you've gone through the grind. Many of the times, you think, I don't have anything to lose because I've seen worse. So you communicate with authenticity. You're not afraid. You don't settle. Like I said, you're so used to struggling and overcoming that grit and hustle come naturally to you. You have strong convictions and a stubborn streak of independence, which I feel was one of the most important things that got me through my life's journey. Because imagine this, I was born in Patna. I was born in Patna in a small locality called Gardhani Bagh. It's not even on the map. To be able to sit over there and dream of showcasing at London Fashion Week wasn't an easy dream. I was laughed at. I'm glad for the basic education, for the preliminary education that was given by my parents was extremely sound. So that sort of definitely did aid me into being able to go in that direction and sort of seek what I wanted to. But it was a difficult dream. All along the way, many times you could have wanted to give up or step back. which didn't happen. Which didn't happen because of the grit, the hustle, and being used to that sort of grit and hustle. So what I'm going to request all of you is to sort of identify what your differentiators are. What are your flaws? What are your identity markers? And explore them, obsess over them, not let the world define you, not let anybody else lay out a path for you, and work on what you think sets you apart and makes you a misfit, because therein lies your cue to becoming your greatest self. Thank you very much.